Hello everybody, Mannix here, going to be doing an exciting little comparison video of the old Cold Steel Recon 1 against the new Cold Steel Recon 1. Both are plain edge, both are the Tonto points. Quite different looking blades here actually. Very different. Both have been well used. This one has been mine for many years, and this one I got used, I think almost 2 years ago now. It's actually in pretty good shape overall. It's not super torn or anything. In fact, the new one right here that I have is even more worn as far as the blade's concerned, but they're probably about a similar level of wear on both of them. Now, I'll get this out of the way right now. The old Recon one, I say this is old, but this Recon one went through a lot of different blade steel changes, I should say. I'll get to that in a minute. But this design came around 2010. It came in 2010. That's when they switched to this design. Everything before 2010 was this one. These are getting pretty rare. They're getting pretty collectible. People are charging or asking for around like $150 or so for these sometimes if they're in good condition. Sometimes sometimes $250. I've seen them higher than that for brand new. They're whatever people are willing to pay for them. You know, they're getting more expensive. I remember looking at these 6-7 years ago. They weren't as expensive, but now they're starting to sell. These knives are getting more and more collectible. All the discontinued Benchmades, discontinued Spydercos, like there's a lot of discontinued CRKTs even. I saw a lot of knives recently. Kershaw's, SOGs. I've been looking through a lot of knives I loved many years ago, almost a decade ago now, and they're getting expensive, and people are buying them too. It's not just on eBay, you know, somebody's asking a ridiculous price and nobody's paying for them. I'm seeing people buy these knives, bidding on them for hundreds in some cases. But anyway, these are getting more expensive. They're getting harder to find, the Cold Steel Recon ones and the older model. I just wanted to do a direct comparison between the two as far as the specs go. If you're not familiar with them, it's just kind of fun. These are definitely going to be higher in price. They'll set you back overall. Again, probably $100 or so for a used one, $150 could be higher. So this is the Recon one with the AUS 8A stainless. Oh, there's no label on there, unfortunately, but it's got AUS 8A on it. I bought it maybe 2014, I think. Doing my research, 2015 is when Cold Steel switched to the CTS XHP blade steel instead of the AUS 8A. And then 2019, they switched to the CPM S35VN. Now, I could be wrong, but I think 2017 and 2018, they switched back to the AUS 8A. I don't know how true it is, but they really tried a lot of different blade steels. So on this new Recon 1 since 2010, from when they switched from this design right here to this design, it had the same exact blade steel. These both had AUS 8A. 2015 to 2016, it was CTS XHP. I believe 2017, 2018, they switched back to the AUS 8A. And then 2019 to today, early mid 2022, they have switched to CPM S35VN, which trumps all of them. It is a very high quality blade steel, which is why it's more expensive now. I don't remember the retail offhand. I think it's like $179.99 or something like that. But you can get them for just above $100. From what I've seen. Everything else about it is exactly the same. I believe this is an even more accurate comparison because they both have the same exact blade steel. So not only the same blade shape, the same edge type, but also the same blade steel. You can't get quite more similar than that as far as these two knives go. So this was circa anywhere from 2010 to 2015. That's this Recon one we're talking about right here. Don't remember exactly the year this one came out, but it's pre-2010. So let's get right on with the comparison. They're quite different knives for a lot of different reasons, but they're quite similar knives for a lot of similar reasons. Their materials are exactly the same. We have G10 handle scales right here. We have the same blade steel, the same Tough X coating, they call it. It's just like a Teflon coating they put on the blade steels right there. Their specifications as far as the lengths go, I think are exactly the same on the nose. We have the handle length of 5.375 inches on the Recon one, the new one. The old one from the specs I looked up from an old catalog said 5 1/3 inches, so that would put it at 5.334 inches, somewhere around there. They're very close though. We're talking 0.03 inch difference maybe, but from here they look pretty much exactly the same. I know it's a little bit lopsided because of the angle the camera's on, so isn't that kind of sweet looking? Look at these two knives. We got old Granddaddy here and his grandson, or his son, which would not make that the granddaddy. I don't even know. I don't know what I'm saying, but the lengths are almost exactly the same. The differences in measurements are going to be the weight and the thickness. We have a much thicker handle on the old Recon 1, and the new Recon 1 you can see is a lot slimmer. Very different shape too, by the way. Very, very different shape. We got two distinctive choils, two cutouts for your index finger and your middle finger right here. We have a more squared off guard right here, and then we have some cutouts up here, which don't really do a whole lot. But as far as the old Recon 1 goes, we have no cutouts. We have a more minor cutout for the handle for your index finger, I suppose, but your middle finger can also go there. It's not quite as comfortable. It's more rounded overall. It's just not quite as comfortable. It's a lot more chunky. It's a lot more versatile, though. There's a difference between versatility and extreme designs. Versatility is more basic. There's not as many big, abrupt cutouts, corners, and turns. It's not as ergonomic. I use quotes there. I'll get to that, why I did the quotes thing in just a minute. It's not quite as ergonomic, but it will float more people's boats. More different hand shapes, different hand sizes, finger sizes, etc. will be more comfortable overall with a versatile design. It won't be as comfortable in any particular grip, but overall it will be not uncomfortable, I should say. That's kind of the advantage to having a versatile design like this. Having a more extreme design is more comfortable for certain people's hands, like mine. My large size hands right here fit this beautifully, but some people who have much bigger fingers than mine, their fingers, you can even see just by this picture, if their fingers are any wider than mine, they will not fit in these choils as well. These choils will feel a little bit cramped to them. Or if they have really small hands, if you're a woman or you're a man who has much smaller hands, it doesn't matter what your gender is. If you have smaller hands, the shape, like maybe your middle finger may ride up on this point right here. It'll be uncomfortable. The knives that some people consider to be ergonomic are not ergonomic at all for other people. That's just the difference between a versatile handle and an extreme handle. Versatility versus extreme designs. But these both happen to comfortably fit me either way. I just think the Recon 1 wins as far as ergonomics go, but it just depends on your hand. But overall, for most people, the Recon 1, I think, is going to be just a little bit more comfortable. This, again, is wider, too. It's a lot wider. We have a big old backspacer there. We do have an aluminum backspacer, I think, on the new Recon 1. But you can just see it's considerably wider on the new one. The new one also has flush-mounted stainless steel liners in there. Yeah, stainless steel liners are going to add to the weight on this guy. I did not give you the weight difference between the two. I'll get to that in just a minute here. But yeah, it's much thicker, much heavier. The new Recon 1, they slimmed it down and lightened it up just a little bit. We also have, elephant in the room, a different locking mechanism. We have the triad lock on the new Recon 1, and we have what they called the ultra lock on the old Recon 1, which essentially is the Benchmade AXIS lock. It's side actuating, and you can do this with the knife, which is super fun to do. Open and close it without even touching the blade whatsoever, because you can relieve the pressure it is putting on the blade without even touching it. So that's pretty cool. Love the Ultra Lock, but overall it's not going to be quite as strong as the Triad Lock. The Triad Lock right here has a big old stop pin that is in between both the lock bar and the blade, and I've made videos on this in the past and talked about it in the past. Cold Steel has made videos on this in the past. Two completely different locking mechanisms. The big differences between these two are going to be the width of and the weight of the old one, as well as its locking mechanism. Ultra Lock, Triad Lock. Bigger, chunkier, heavier, slimmer, and lighter. That's about it. Other than that, then we have a lower riding pocket clip on the older Recon 1 as well. Let's take a look at how they ride. The newer one, it rides up just a little bit more. If we were to make these more parallel, that's about the difference in what will be poking out in your pocket. If you were to carry these two, there's considerably more poking out here, almost twice as much. The upside to that is that you can grip it out of your pocket a little bit easier. There's a little bit more protruding. You can grab it quicker, and because they both have pretty much the same texture G10 right here, they look to be almost the same pattern. They're about just as grippy. It's kind of hard to tell when a knife's used because G10 grip softens with use over time, just like sandpaper. It feels sandpapery, but it's, it's kind of a medium grip now. Fresh G10 right out of the box. Oh, it's so sexy. It's like really, really grippy. But as soon as you pass your thumb on it, even just a couple times, it starts to dig away at it and it softens with use. We have a lot more poking out here, so it's going to be easier to pull out of your pocket, but it is more obtrusive. It can snag on things easier. That is something to keep in mind. The new one, it's riding up pretty much as high as I could get it. In fact, you can even see it protruding out of the contour line in the handle scale, which kind of looks ugly, to be honest. It looks like it was kind of just slapped on there. Remember, Cutlery Lover made a review on this over a decade ago, and he was complaining about that. Yeah, I kind of agree, but the advantage to it is that it's just a little bit higher riding, so it's more covert. It's still just enough to reach out onto and pull out of your pockets. It's not that big of a deal. However, as far as speed is concerned, you could consider the old Recon one a little bit better because it's just a little bit more to grip onto. And in a tactical situation, in an emergency situation, maybe that is an advantage. It kind of just depends on what you're going for. They're both swappable to the left side. They are both completely ambidextrous knives. However, the new Recon ones come with a second pocket clip because this is a lopsided pocket clip, which will not fit very well or at all in this. It could probably, but the pocket clip will be swerving that way because it's lopsided, as you can see, but it comes with a second one. You can slap it on there, and then there you go. So they're both ambidextrous. Which pocket clip designs wins? Personally, I kind of like the old one. I like this ventilated clip, but I really don't care that much. It's fine. They're both kind of stubby, which I like. I mean, having the bigger pocket clips overall, I think are a little safer or carry better, but these are so tight. I mean, it's not going to be an issue as far as carrying goes. Some people complain that they're too tight. I disagree. These maybe older Recon ones or certain runs of the Recon ones or certain Cold Steels were tighter, but I have not had an issue with most Cold Steels. I say 90% of the Cold Steels I've had, and I've had a lot of them. I have not had an issue with the pocket clip being too tight. They're a little tighter than most of the other knives out there on the market, but overall I don't think it's a problem. And the advantage to having a tighter pocket clip means it's not going to fall out of your pocket as easily, which is kind of nice. You just don't want it so tight that it's hard to get out. Now, one more major difference is the deployment method. We have a thumb disc right here. New Recon one, we have thumb studs, which are a little bit more common. It's lopsided as well, more towards the right side. However, you can put in a flathead screwdriver in there, get some pliers on the other side, unscrew it, and then swap it out if you're lefty and you want to have the thumb stud protruding more out on the other side. I don't know why they're not just regular dual thumb studs, but that's just what they decided to do. Cold Steel does that a lot on a lot of their folders. What's better? Personally, I don't love the thumb plates or thumb discs. They don't really have an advantage as far as I'm concerned. It still works fine. I don't have a problem with it, but I think the thumb stud works just a little bit better. It's just a little bit more to grip onto. So what else is there to really say about them? I mean, again, shape is different, weight is different, ergos are a little different. The blade shape, definitely, we have kind of like a spear point onto. I think it looks a little cooler on the old Recon one right here. But the new Recon one, it's more rectangular. What's really better? This is going to be just a little bit better for piercing. This is going to be better overall for strength, I guess, because there's less of a cutout right there. But they're very close. It's not a big deal. Functionally, they're going to be very similar. We have more cutting edge to work with on the second edge right here on the Tonto. This has a little bit less, and you can see it doesn't dip quite. It's more of an obtuse angle. This has a little bit more of an acute angle, although it's not that big of a deal. It's just different. They just decided to go with a more Americanized Tonto, a more modern American Tonto shape here. This is more like a spear point Tonto. I think this is cooler looking again, but they both function just fine. Let's weigh the two. So the specs I found for the new Recon 1, the weight is 5.2 ounces, and I could not find the weight on the old Recon 1. But let's use my scale and find out the difference right here, right now. Let's settle it. So according to their website, the new Recon 1 has a 5.2 ounce. Oh wait, let me try that again, sorry. My scale is saying 5.33. It's a little different from what their website says. Old Recon 1, we are at 6.68. So about like an ounce and a half higher, just about. But it's actually not that big of a deal. It feels considerably heavier. It could just be subliminal because the steel liners are in there and it's wider. But basically, it's just the steel liners that are flush mounted there. They're just adding to the weight just a little bit, but it's not a whole lot. It's just a little over an ounce. Mainly the difference is going to come down to preference, but overall, as far as vertical strength goes, locking mechanism strength, the new Recon 1 wins because we have a triad lock instead of the ultra lock. However, as far as speed goes, I'm going to say the old Recon 1 wins. It's a little bit weaker as far as its locking mechanism goes, but it's still a very, very strong locking mechanism. These withstand hundreds and hundreds of pounds. I think 500-600 pounds of weight. As far as vertical strength goes, I think it's just a little bit faster because we have less tension going on the blade here. Lockback mechanisms in general, they put a lot of pressure on the blade. There's no detent on it, but the lockback itself sucks it back in. Same thing with the Ultra Lock. There's a little bit less of a detent. It could just be because this one's older, and now it's a little bit weaker, but I know these side actuating locking mechanisms tend to be faster as far as deployment goes for the knife in comparison to the lockback style knives. They're a little bit more stiff, but that's just what you get. They're stronger, so that's just kind of what you have to deal with. A little bit stronger as far as the locking mechanism goes, but it's a little bit slower. In order to flick it out, you have to give it just a little bit of a wrist flick. Sometimes you can almost get away without flicking your wrist like that, but you gotta just give it a little bit of a wrist flick to deploy it quickly. That's one disadvantage. However, this one does not need much of a wrist flick at all. I have this a little bit tighter, I think. You don't need very much of a wrist flick. It's just a faster locking mechanism overall. So speed, old Recon one wins. New one's a little bit slower, but it is stronger. That's the trade-off. The new one wins as far as mobility goes, as far as how light it is lighter weight. This one's just a little bit heavier, so it's going to win as far as stealth is concerned, let's just say. It is slimmer, so it's going to take up less space. It's just less obtrusive, takes up less space, it's less heavy, a little lighter. You know, it's just a little bit easier to carry the new Recon one. The old one is a chunky monkey, so it wins as far as lightweightness goes. However, the old Recon one has more to hold on to. Some people like the weight. The weight will give you a little bit more, I don't want to say not strength necessarily, but it will give you more firepower, so to speak. If you're gouging into something or you're whacking against something, the weight will actually add a little bit to the power, but that's a very specific cut. Most of the time, when it comes to knives, you're more just talking about the cutting edge itself and the blade and its lockup. You're not really going to care too much about the weight of the knife. But there's specific tasks where weight could help. But overall, we have wider handle right here. There's more to hold on to, more to grip. There is physically less to grip onto when you have a slimmer knife. I actually don't prefer the slimmer knives. I think they're less hand-filling. I think they are less hand-filling. They're just not quite as comfortable to me, but they do carry better. They just take up less space in your pocket. That's about it, though. I mean, I think the overall ergonomics are not as good on the old Recon one. New Recon one, we have better, we have choils on here. You can choke up on it like this. I like the ergos on the new Recon one for sure. Old Recon one, not quite as comfortable, but it's more hand-filling. And then aside from that, we have a thumb disc instead of thumb studs. I think the new Recon one wins as well. It just catches onto your thumb a little bit easier. This one, although it's not very obtrusive, it's hard to get to or anything. It's just, I don't know. It needs a little something, and that's why they changed that when they upgraded to the new Recon 1. As far as carry goes, I'm going to say overall the new one wins just because it's less obtrusive. And I kind of get it. I mean, they could have just scooched this up just a little bit more. In fact, they could have scooched this really high up and maybe made that body screw double as a pocket clip screw. But I get it. I think they were just kind of going for, like, hey, this is a tactical blade. We want it to be easily accessible. So we're going to have a lot poking out of the pocket right there. But it's just a little bit too much. I wish it was just a smidge higher, which is what they did. That's why they changed that. Well, they're doing, because again, we have quite a bit poking out. It'll carry just like that, so almost twice as much anyway. So as far as speed goes, again, old Recon 1 wins, not just because of the locking mechanism, but because it's more easily accessible. But it's not that big of a deal. You can get used to these. Even lube over clips, people can get really fast at them and pull them out of their pocket just fine. It's usually not that big of a deal. So that's pretty much it. It's kind of just a fun little comparison video. It's not really like, oh, which one do you want to choose? I mean, you got to choose wisely. It's like not that big of a deal because these are discontinued now. You know, it's just, I think it's just an interesting comparison. Strength, oh yeah, one more thing. As far as horizontal strength goes, the old one is going to win because of the steel liners in there. But I mean, really, what are you using your knives for where you need all that extra strength for horizontal torsional rigidity? I don't know. I don't see a situation unless you're trying to pry something. But even then, your blade's probably going to snap if you try hard enough, even without the steel liners. So I think it's redundant, again, which is why I think they got rid of them. So let's recap real quick here. Other than shape, other than personal preference, weight, the new one is lighter, and the locking mechanism is stronger on the new one. So we have a stronger, better locking mechanism for strength, and then we have a lighter, slimmer knife overall. So not only did we gain some mobility and it's more lightweight and it's easier to carry, we gained a little bit of strength overall too with the new Recon 1, which is why overall I do think it is an upgrade. It's a more efficient design overall. However, we do have a little bit of speed on the old one, believe it or not, because the AXIS lock is just a little bit faster, albeit a little weaker. Not that big of a deal though, it's still an extremely strong locking mechanism. Ultra lock, sorry, not the AXIS lock. And it's a little bit quicker to deploy because there's a little bit more poking out of your pocket. And there's a little bit more to grip onto just because it's a thicker knife overall. So as far as tactical use goes, I'm going to say maybe the old Recon 1 outperforms the new Recon 1 in some ways. But overall, the new one is an upgrade as a whole. Even though there's less to grip onto as far as the handle thickness is concerned, we have some deeper cutouts in the choil, so your hand will still lock into the handle a little better. That's basically it. It's just that neither one's really better or worse. I just think overall the new one is an improvement. But there's certainly some things I miss about the old one. Definitely the locking mechanism especially. That's going to be the big one for me, is that ultra lock. I do miss it. I don't know if Cold Steel's allowed to use it anymore. I don't know what happened there. There's certain knives like Gerber, the Gerber Sumo, that uses the Benchmade AXIS lock on it. I don't know how they got away with it. I don't know if Benchmade lost the patent. But hey, interesting comparison. So anyway, that is it. Old versus new Recon 1.